My best friend doesn't have a name. He sits in the corner of my bedroom every night, watching me silently. Or at least, I think he looks at me. His face is hard to see. It's dark, and he has a hood on that shields him from me. The first time I saw him, I was terrified. I cried for Mommy and told her to chase the monster away. What monster? She said. She couldn't see him. She gave me a hug and told me there were no such things. I barely slept that night. I sat curled up in the corner of my bed staring at him. It must have been for hours, but I finally gained the courage to ask him, "Are you going to hurt me?" The moonlight had shifted, so I could see his hood much clearer. I still couldn't see his face, hidden in the shadow of the hood. He shook his head. "Why can't Mommy see you?" He didn't answer. Eventually, I got too tired, so I fell asleep. When I woke up in the morning, he was gone. A brown teddy bear sat on the sofa in his place. I recruited Teddy into my tea party. By lunch, I had forgotten all about the great cloaked shadow monster. He appeared again that night, and the night after that, and the night after that. He would leave behind little presents for me every morning: a pony, colored pencils, chocolate. Slowly, I got used to his presence in my room. It always got a little colder with him around, but it was all right if I stayed deep under my blanket. I started sharing my day with him, telling him things that I couldn't tell Mommy. "Johnny pushed me today," I said. "He's always so mean." "Mary pulled my pigtails today," I sobbed. "She called me ugly and said I was a loser. That's why Daddy ran away." He usually listened quietly in the corner, occasionally nodding or shaking his head. He didn't give any advice or get angry at the bullies, but I always would feel better after telling him about it. That was until last night. I woke up to a scream. It was Mommy's. "Please, no," she begged. "Leave her alone." Then came a slapping sound. "She's my daughter," a man's voice shouted back. "I'm taking her with me." It was Daddy. I didn't know what to do, whether to run, whether to hide, or whether to curl up safe under my blankets. Daddy was a good daddy, but could be a bad daddy too on some days, and a real bad daddy on other days. But I thought if I could talk to the cloaked shadow monster, I was brave enough not to hide. I ran to the door, but a black thin hand stopped me. He must have been so skinny. His long fingers were almost bony. He had gotten up from the sofa and stood between me and the door. "Stay here," he commanded. I couldn't move. He took out a large curved blade, the kind we saw in school used by farmers to harvest their crops. The room felt even colder. There was thumping outside, like someone was running up the steps. He swung open the door and went out of my room. "What the hell?" "Adam Queen," he said. "Life is done with you." There was a scream, and then silence. I never saw him since then. Mommy said Daddy came in and wanted to take me away, but passed away from a heart attack. But Mommy doesn't know the truth. My best friend saved my life. Have you ever seen someone or something out of the corner of your eye, lurking in the shadows? It looks like a person, but when you look, there's nothing there. I've always called these them. Googling it always brought up different ideas from different cultures: ghosts, demons, vampires, you name it, and someone out there in all of the forums has already suggested it. There are a few people who said they had experienced the same thing when they were children, and they just put it down to kids being kids, or one too many horror movies when the babysitter fell asleep. Like most things, they outgrew it, or them just left them alone. But for me, I have seen them for as long as I can remember. Even when I was a kid, I have vague memory of seeing them. My parents always brushed it off as an overactive imagination. They were always lurking in the shadows, staying just out of my vision. Nothing is ever there when I look, but as soon as I look away from there, I could see them. They would return, lurking. For some reason, no matter where I moved to, they always seem to follow me from house to house, country to country. They would always disappear after a while. I became used to them, and even the fact of them becoming a part of my everyday life. But after a while, the feeling of being alone would return, relieving me of the pressure of the constant feeling of being watched. I turned 30 last week. I've started seeing them more and more over the last 6 months. It started off slow. One would appear in the corner of my vision and just stand there, not moving. When I look at them, they're gone. Only now, when I look away, they're back, just closer. At first, with all these late nights working at the office and trying to maintain some kind of social life, I figured the tiredness was catching up with me and causing my mind to play tricks on itself. Until I looked again, and they have gotten closer. There are more than one now. I can hear them whispering to each other. Why did I look again? The whispering is getting louder. They are getting closer to me, whispering, begging me to look at them again, asking me to join them. I can feel their breath on the sides of my face. The constant whispering again, begging me, imploring me to look at them. I'm fighting with everything I have to stop myself from looking. The whispering is getting louder. It's deafening. It's maddening. I can't hear myself type anymore. I'm going to look. I have to look. And this time, I know all my questions I've been asking myself will be answered. I need to know what them are. Those who drive late at night while the whole world sleeps get to experience a different version of reality. I was driving home at 4:40 in the morning when I experienced this for myself. The road stretched out in front of me, the quiet hum of the radio trying to suppress the gnawing feeling that while everyone else was in bed, I was traveling through the Welsh mountains where houses were few and far between. I was at my friend's house, and time escaped me. The only thing that scared me more than traveling at night was my parents waking up in the morning and realizing I wasn't home. It was an hour and a half drive from my friend's place in the mountains to my home, so I drank down a cup of coffee and got in the car. I had been driving for about 40 minutes when I saw it. The roads to the mountains wind around the actual mountainside in a snake like formation. Your view is blocked by the mountains. I was coming around one of the bends when I looked into my rearview mirror and saw it. It was quite a distance behind me, so all I could make out was a tall figure standing at the edge of the road with what appeared to be branch like protrusions coming from its head. It was too far back to tell which way it was facing, so I pressed the accelerator just a little bit harder, trying to steady the quickening of my heart. I took glances in the back mirror, but reassured myself it was quite a distance away and was probably just a man walking home late at night and nothing more. I was beginning to relax when I was rounding the next corner and carefully glanced into my rearview mirror. A bolt went through me when I again saw the figure. However, this time it had covered half the distance between us. My mind went into a frenzy as I desperately tried to explain how something could have moved that quickly. It was still too dark to make out, but from the bulk of the thing, I knew it wasn't human. It couldn't be. Something primal flared up in me, and it was a determined race to escape this figure behind me. I pushed the acceleration down to 65 miles an hour, an impossible speed around such winding roads, but I was scared out of my mind. Alarm bells for danger were blaring in my head, and I knew I had to make sure this thing didn't reach me. In the distance, I could see the approaching lights of a town, and I told myself I would reach there before it got to me. Suddenly, I rounded another corner and almost crashed the car in shock. There it was, silhouetted. The figure was now in front of me, within only seconds from the last time I saw it in the rearview mirror. Behind it, I could see the lights of the town. This thing, whatever the hell it was, stood upright and watched me intently before it turned slightly and its shape changed to having a lower part of a stag. Its eyes, red voids, stared into mine, and I could sense the fury it had. I felt like prey. Mist rolled onto the road, and as it disappeared towards the nearby forest, so too did the figure. I watched in dismay, and once it was gone, I entered the town, and I wept until I got home, having seen something no one, no one was meant to see. It's been a year since then, but sometimes I still see its silhouette in my dreams, getting closer and closer every time. And then I awake, but with the sneaking suspicion that it isn't just a dream after all.